Hello, everybody. Well, guess what? This is Scale-Up Podcast episode guest number 20. Did you ever think that we would get here? Well, I wasn't sure, but we have. Turns out that it's hard to run out of companies that are actually growing. There's, I don't, of course, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of them out there. Scale-Up Podcasts I bring for you. As you know, it's free. I do it as a serious hobby. I love learning about how companies grow, and companies in all different sectors, all different industries, all different stages of life, so to speak, and different business models. And I'm really excited that I have another new business model here with us today. And this is FactoredAI and Israel Niezen. Say hello, Israel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dan, so much for inviting me to speak today. And it's an honor to be interviewed by you after 20 years since you were my professor at that one business school.
Oh, so you already gave that away. I have to say that as a disclaimer that no. And it's great to see you again. We've been in touch in those 20 years, but it's good to see you again. And so, Israel, we're going to talk about FactoredAI. But before we get there, tell us just a little bit about yourself and the journey personal journey that you've had to get to FactoredAI without saying much about the business. Talk about yourself more personally.
Absolutely. So, and this is somewhat connected. So, born and raised in Lima, Peru, I immigrated here as a teenager, was educated in the States, was lucky enough to be accepted to a great university for my master's degree, worked at startups for 20 some years, had a little bit of a midlife crisis where I wanted to learn how to code. So started learning machine learning and data science. And that's how I got into this area. And
Well, would you consider yourself a geek or a non-geek as a young teenager, post-teenager?
I think as a teenager, I was probably a guitar geek. So I was a headbanger. I play guitar, but I wasn't coding or doing anything that geeky. And I turned into a tech geek later on in life after B school.
Where did you grow up in the United States?
So I spent my teenage years in Florida. And right after undergrad, I moved to California, where I've spent most of my life. So I've lived in California longer than I've lived anywhere else.
So where in California?
Los Angeles, California.
So that's where the company is headquartered?
So we started the company in Palo Alto. And thankfully, COVID allowed me to move wherever I wanted. And so I moved back to Los Angeles because I couldn't stay in Palo Alto.
It's interesting. Do you find there's a tech community there? Because I've invested in another company that I've hosted, Sunbit. Also, they decided we're going to avoid the noise of Silicon Valley. We're going to come to LA. Is there a community of technology startups there?
There is a community of technology startups. It's nothing like Palo Alto. It's nothing like Silicon Valley, but it's a much more livable place for people like me, right? I like to surf. I love live music, and I just find that Los Angeles is much more rich in the cultural and diversity department. Plus, my engineers are mostly working remotely, and so I don't necessarily need to be anywhere physically.
And many of them are overseas. Is that right?
Pretty much most of them, yeah, in Latin America specifically, yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I want to understand what FactoredAI is and what is the problem or pain point that you're trying to address?
Absolutely. So look, as companies start to accelerate their AI, data science, machine learning initiatives, there is a lack of very highly qualified talent, especially in Silicon Valley, right? The OpenAIs of the world, the Microsofts of the world are sucking up all that talent. You see all about the talent wars. And meanwhile, in Latin America, there's brilliant engineers, physicists, mathematicians who have been doing machine learning for 6, 7, 8 years. And so we bridge that gap. What we do is we find, recruit, train, engage, build teams from Latin America of the highest caliber engineers, and build teams for U.S. companies. So those companies can be Fortune 100 companies or tech companies, fintechs, you name it.
Can you give us an idea of the kinds of customers that you have or partners that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I can actually mention them, but I'll give you a broad range. So, uh, the second or third biggest supermarket chain has a lot of our engineers. The biggest car rental company in the world, the biggest dating app company in the world. We help them build matching algorithms so people can date each other. One of the most prominent business schools in the world that you and I may have ties to, the Cancer Institute at an Ivy League institution where we help to cancer treatment.
Can you just go a
In
little another level of detail and say whether it's business school or whether it's dating app, give a little more detail about how you what's their pain point and how you address it.
Absolutely. So different companies have different things, right? So, for example, the dating app mostly needs to build matching algorithms, right? So they need to take tons of data and figure out how to surface the right kinds of potential dating profiles to a user, right? Based on a bunch of data. And so we might be building those kinds of models. The car rental company might need to plan their inventory, right? Where do you have the cars? When do you do maintenance, right? When do you sell the car versus buy a new car? When is it more expensive to keep maintaining it versus buying a new one? That kind of thing.
So
The
this may be a little bit of a provocative question, but aren't these the kinds of problems that today Chat GPT and the likes can solve by themselves without having to hire your team?
That is what a lot of people think, but Gen AI is a subset of AI in general, right?
Say more.
Traditional, I would argue traditional machine learning and the kinds of boring problems that companies have deliver the best ROI. So, for example, for the supermarket chain that we work with, we help them build algorithms that detect missing inventory, and that missing inventory was causing missed sales. You can't ask ChatGPT, right, to flag what items are missing in your aisles, but you can build a proprietary system that allows your inventory personnel to do these kinds of things. And for example, things like that, save companies $400 million in lost sales, right? In the case of even building Gen AI solutions, you want the Gen AI solutions to not hallucinate, right? So you even in that world, you have to build retrieval augmented systems or vector search systems that are looking at a specific corpus of data, not just what ChatGPT was trained on, but your corpus of data. And so you need engineers to build, to make sure that data is available, to make sure to route these Gen AI solutions to the right areas. And so I am not of the mindset that at least Gen AI currently just does everything by itself. I think you still need brilliant engineering minded people to architect these kinds of solutions.
So is this a little bit like the business process outsourcing that we saw emerging in the 80s and 90s from Indian companies that they were arbitraging this highly skilled labor force, but very inexpensive in India to solve big software projects in the United States? Or is this different somehow?
I think there's some similarities, but I think there's some very specific and important differences. Similarities in the sense that we're near shore, right? So we're not in the US, we're in Latin America. But what that means is we're in the same time zone as the US, allowing us to work hand in hand with the engineering teams, the product teams, and the business teams that own the problem in their own time zone. That gives us much more uh, a much closer view to their business and their problem than having to wait 12 hours for someone to code. The other thing is our positioning is super high caliber. So our engineers are some of the best in the world. We're publishing papers at NeurIPS, the most prestigious conferences for AI in the world. In fact, we won the best paper at NeurIPS in the data sets and benchmarks category. So I am not essentially creating a body shop here. I'm creating a very high caliber, highly specialized AI machine learning company, and we're not competing on price, right? We're essentially competing against, if you will, hiring a bottom tier US engineer with a super high tier Latin American engineer.
So how do people find out about you?
That's a great question. I've only just hired our heads of marketing and heads of sales in the last year and a half. And so the first 5 years was word of mouth, right? So, I have a background in sales. And so I called everybody, including, uh, you know, students that I went to school with, friends, and then we did good work. And then what happens is there's some turnover at the CTO and chief data officer level. So when they leave a company, they know we did great work, and then they would take us to the next company and the next company. And so we scaled the company to about 18 million in annual revenue before I hired our first VP of sales and our VP of marketing, and now we're getting closer to 30 mil and growing beyond that.
I think I'm gonna have to end this podcast prematurely because you are flying in the face of everything that we teach our students, is that you have to have a plan and you have to build your marketing in advance and you have to have your sales early on. And what you're saying is do an amazing job, uh, do it as senior enough so that the word of mouth really has an impact when it starts to spread, and that will bring your sales in. It is that you calling
I
it.
mean, look, you have to have a sales plan, right? You have to have marketing positioning. You have to have a point of view. You have to have all these things. And what I'm saying is, as a founder, that's what I did. I'm a non-technical founder. So I had great engineers to take care of the engineering stuff. And what I did was the go-to-market, right? And so absolutely, from the very first day, I knew what our positioning was. I knew how we were going to be different, and I articulated it very well.
So I do want to get into the numbers, at least a few of the numbers, whatever you can tell us.
Yeah.
But I also want to understand how you price your services. So tell us a little bit about that.
What do you want to start with?
Well, go ahead.
Pricing, revenue.
Yeah, talk about pricing. How do
Right.
I know how much to pay you?
Yeah.
Or are you building a much, much more sophisticated series of algorithms and systems
Yeah.
for me to match people on dates?
Yeah, no. So we are a services firm, by design, a professional services firm. And what we do is we charge on a time and materials basis. Most of our business is long-term placements. I'm talking about sometimes we place engineers for 2, 3, 4, 5 years embedded in our clients' teams. In that world, our pricing might range from $12,000 a month to $16,000 a month, all in per engineer, right? So that's the equivalent of maybe 60-70% of the cost of hiring an equivalently talented engineer in the US. So it is a discount, but we don't front with the discount, if you will. We win on the quality. It just happens to be a little bit more cost effective. And then the other part of the business is where we manage the service ourselves, right? So it's completely fully managed services. We architect the solution. We bring the engineers. We manage the engineers. We deliver an outcome. And that one, as you can imagine, is priced at a premium, much closer to a professional services firm in the States.
Can you just
So
give us
it's
a
one.
rough idea? Give us a rough idea of how the pricing works for that.
Yeah. So in that world, you're looking at $150 to $200 an hour, right? It's shorter term projects, so they're a little bit more expensive. But our competitors in the US that are not as good are charging 250, 300, 350 an hour.
So you said that you could say something about your sales today. You mentioned 18 million a couple of years ago. Where do you stand now, and how do you see it
Yeah.
developing?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I'll tell you a story. 2019, we launched the company in very late 2019. And 2020 was our first full year. It was a very slow year because it's transitioning. So 700,000. Then we went to 3 mil in 2021, 2022, 8.4, 2023, 13.2, 2024, 18 mil. This year, we hope to end at around 30, 32, maybe 35 mil if we do really, really well. Next year, we hope to go to 60. 2027, we hope to go to 90 and then break 100 mil in 2028. And then maybe that's when we start thinking about an exit.
And did you have to raise money or significant money in order to get there?
Had to is an interesting word for us. We
It's
had to in the sense that we incubated the company out of the AI fund, which is Dr. Andrew Ng's startup studio.
he's
And
Stanford.
as part of
He's a Stanford guy.
Stanford, yeah, he's a Stanford AI professor, founder of Coursera, founder of Deep Learning AI. He's one of the, he's an eminence in the world of AI. And it's been a great partnership, but as part of that partnership, they take a pretty significant amount of your cap table. And if they're going to do that, then you clearly want to take a check. Now, between you and I, looking back, we probably didn't need that check as much because this is by design a profitable business.
Okay.
So we took a $2.5 million check that we never really ran out of. If that answers your question.
So you really didn't, your success as a company has not been really dependent on your ability to raise money at all, right?
No. Yeah, not at all. In fact, some of my earlier conversations with venture capitalists were not super fruitful because they feel they wanted to turn this into a platform company, right? A marketplace kind of thing, which is more around the kind of thesis that they were investing in 2019. And I wanted to be a professional services company because my vision for the company was to be the best home for the engineers. If you win with the engineers, if you create the best place for them, you get the customers.
So where do they
And
come?
I don't believe a talent platform does that, right?
Where do they
That's a
come
low
from?
touch.
Let's talk about the supply side, so to speak. And where do they come from, and what are some of the issues and how you address them of bringing in a couple of hundred of these, or maybe more by now, of these amazingly talented people from other countries?
Yeah, we're about 350 people now. And we started in Colombia. We started with a very, very, very small group of super high caliber engineers.
Why Colombia?
So Colombia was a very interesting place for a number of reasons. The universities in Colombia are highly quant, very, very strong in quant, in engineering, math, physics. Brazil and Argentina already have highly sophisticated domestic markets for engineering talent, whereas Colombia didn't in 2019. And so these engineers didn't particularly have a lot of great options. And so you had brilliant talent, highly quant, which is great for machine learning because you can take them and you can turn them into great machine learning engineers. And so with obviously our DNA and training and taking people from 60 to 95, right? We were able to take some of these brilliant quants and make them brilliant machine learning engineers, create a brilliant training program. And then the word got out that we were, one of the best shops, if not the best shop in Colombia for engineers. Now, Colombia is a smaller country. And so beyond Colombia, we had to grow. And our second biggest country now is Brazil, where now the word is getting out. Argentina is our third biggest country. Our fourth biggest country is my home country of Peru. And I think Guatemala is maybe the fifth. But we're in 21 different countries. Or 14 different countries in Latin America.
You're sourcing talent.
Right.
And how do you keep them excited, motivated, happy, and feeling part of a team when they're so far away?
Yeah, that is the biggest challenge. And, and I think that's the one thing that we've gotten right. One is people, right? So the first thing is people. And so something beautiful happens when you keep talent density very, very high. It really, this is a saying that everybody says, and I know it's going to sound like super common, but when you hire A players, they only want to work with A players. And the A players for us doesn't just mean great technical acumen, but it means people's, love for our mission, right? And so we have really high talent density, people that really, really, really care. And so they've become the best filter, better filter than I could be, not allowing other people who don't belong as part of our tribe to be part of our tribe, right? And then that tribe became a village, and then maybe now a city, right? And so I think people is the best thing that we got right, keeping talent density super, super high. And then the other thing is being authentic about our mission, right? I'm South American. I was lucky enough to immigrate to this country in an era where this country was welcoming of immigrants. That unfortunately is changing. But the opportunity for these immigrants needs to continue, right? Or the opportunity for talent from the best, the US needs to benefit from the best of the best in the world. And so I'm making that happen. I'm allowing US companies to grow by hiring the best of the best without uprooting these engineers from their families, from their music, from their friends, from the land that they grew up in, that they love, right? And so I know there's beautiful talent out there, brilliant talent out there that needs that opportunity. I am one of them. And so that authenticity behind our mission keeps them engaged because they believe in the mission as well, right?
So let me push that a little bit more. If you could say something about how they're organized. Let's say in Colombia, do they sit together? Do they do things together? Do they have that sense of community? And then how do you give them that sense of community or belonging or mission when they're working remotely from the headquarters?
Yeah. So it's a balancing act. First, we're mostly remote. Now, we do have certain cities in the world, like Sao Paulo, Brazil, like Medellin, Colombia, Bogota, Colombia, Buenos Aires, where we have enough of a talent density where we might have some office presence and people show up, right, and spend. I believe last time we did a survey, 40% of our people like to go to the office at least 2 or 3 days a week, voluntarily, completely voluntarily. But it's mostly to socialize and see other humans, right? And Latin Americans are pretty social people, right? And so, they go out after work, they dance, they party, they do sports together, they play music. A lot of us are musicians, myself included. And so these are the kinds of things that we do together. We have an annual, it was a Christmas party that turned into a festival because now there's so many of us, where we literally do Battle of the Bands. We do a 3-day sort of offsite at some.
So everyone comes together from
all over
everyone.
all over the country, yeah, all over sorry, Latin America, right?
Or no, for example, where did they come to last Christmas?
Right. So our last one, well, it was no longer a Christmas party. This was in February. Our last one was in Cartagena, Colombia.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
And so we got the entire company there. We did team building events. We played music together. We danced together. We did sports together. Some of us weightlifted together. And so you have these touch points. And then locally people get together, right? So we spend budget in getting them together, getting them to have drinks and dinners together. Virtually, we do things as well. We play games. We have virtual happy hours. We get together every single week. We have an end of week every week where we all celebrate each other's sort of wins. We welcome new team members. And so, look, it's a balance. So far, we seem to have gotten it right, but it's certainly not easy, but it's doable. And so whenever anybody says you can't scale a remote company, I think that's just an excuse for people that are not hiring best-in-class talent, right? I think if you hire the best people, they'll make it work.
So you say you're also moving to source from other non-Latin American countries. Could you just say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, 100% of our market is the States. So we only work exclusively with US companies. So we have to hire English-speaking engineers, and our differentiator, because there's a lot of great engineering firms in India and Eastern Europe, our differentiator is to be the best of the best in Latin America in the same time zone as the US. So Latin America is the place. But we've hired a couple of Jamaicans. I don't know if we consider Jamaica Latin America, right? But our Jamaicans are doing great, great work. They're some of our best engineers, and they love it, and they feel the love. We have a Chinese national that is living in Colombia, and he feels the love. And we have an Indian national that's living in Mexico, and he feels the love. And so I think it's less a cultural thing and more a time zone thing, because I think the culture that we have is excellence. I think actually there's something I want to say about that culture, because I think it defines something that I've seen. If you have the rigor, the academic, professional, technical rigor of California, and you mix it with the passion, the warmth, the personality, the directness of Latin America, you're untouchable. Like literally, I think we win in Latin America and we win in the US because of that combination. And so that bicultural aspect, I think, is a great benefit.
So I want to come back to a less a less moving part of the story.
Uh-huh.
We'll talk a little
Sure.
bit about sales and then cycle back to the future. But so you said that initially it was you just calling up people, and then it was word of mouth when people, your customers, moved around. Is that scalable, and if not, how are you going to scale the sales and marketing going forward?
Well, look, I'll tell you our story, and then I'll tell you how we're scaling it now, right? So the short answer is it's not scalable, right? I happen to have a sales background. I was a chief revenue officer before, and so I happen to be good at sales, and so I was able to maybe take it a little further than your typical tech CEO. The first hire I made was an SDR because once I got in rooms, I could close the business, but I didn't have enough time to get into the rooms. So I hired a brilliant SDR. She got us into tons of calls. We started closing more business. I got us to 18 mil. Once we got to 18 mil, I couldn't do it by myself. So we hired a VP of sales, and he's now built an entire team, right? So he hired a brilliant head of sales development who now, I think there's 4 SDRs under that person, literally making calls, booking meetings. We now have 3 account executives closing the deals. We now have a head of marketing. And so you're absolutely right. It's not scalable, right? You can't be the hero CEO. But I just wanted to get the pitch right. I wanted to get everything perfected before we scaled it. And maybe I took a little too long to hand over the baton, but now we're scaling nicely, right? So our VP of sales and our VP of marketing are gonna take us almost double to 32, 35 mil, and then grow from there. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and is sales and marketing, is that based in Los Angeles or close by?
Actually, they're both in the Bay Area.
Okay, but
So
they're in the United States. They're not in Latin
yeah,
America. So that's a real.
yeah, absolutely. Our go-to-market team, um, with the exception of customer success and account management, where we have some brilliant English-speaking account managers in Latin America, our account execs, our head of marketing, our head of sales are all California-based.
So, looking into the future, you brought up the word exit. I usually don't talk about exit, by the way, because I view exit as it's not exactly a byproduct, but if your company is focused on exit, this is my belief, then you lose sight of the business itself. And but giving liquidity to shareholders is I think important. What's your vision of the exit for Factored AI?
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a time horizon component and there's a valuation horizon component, and it's a question of balancing the two. My founding team and I have been in the business for 6.5 years, and it's been 6 pretty tough years. And we believe we have 4 or 5 more years of this level of energy and this level of animus in us. Um, and that lines up nicely with what you said. We're a VC-backed company, and there's a time horizon element, right? To return of the fund to their LPs, and so that's kind of like the horizon that my board and I have set around 4 more years or so. Now, in terms of valuation, this is where it gets into who knows territory, right? I think we believe we can get the company to at least a half a unicorn valuation, 500, $600 million valuation before exit. But that's potentially a stretch. But it could be more, it could be slightly less. We'll see. And then, by the way, if we get there and my team and I look at each other and we say, hey, we're still growing 70% a year, let's keep going, and then Israel can hire more help and kiss a few more babies and give a few more speeches, sure. But who knows? But that is what our horizon looks like currently.
Do you ever see yourselves stumbling upon, let's say, a product or slash platform that could give a new generation of life to factored AI?
100%. I think there's a huge opportunity, and it's a combination of two things. So as our engineers spend, for example, some of them have been solving machine learning and AI problems in fintech specifically for 6 years, right? And they become experts in AI for fintech, right? They find commonalities, right? And so we can start thinking about, hey, listen, we know how to build the best data warehouse for alternative credit scoring and credit default predictions. And so now we can do these kinds of engagements and have a lead behind product, right? And or potentially do a spin-off someday because we're so good at solving these kinds of problems, right? And that also lines up well with the fact that our most senior engineers, right? As you can imagine, and you know this well, a services company is kind of like up or out. But a lot of our senior engineers don't want out. They want to stay at Factored. But, arbitraging them becomes a little bit more difficult. A lot of them don't want to be people managers. They don't want to be engagement managers. They want to be technical senior engineers. And so there's absolutely an opportunity, and we're looking at it very seriously to create product that is accelerator IP, right? Maybe leave behind kind of IP. So we're tech-enabled services and or spin-offs out of Factored, run by our engineers, where we pair them up with some hungry product or business types to run the business side of things.
I can only imagine that there's in not too many places, we have a few hundred of extraordinarily talented engineers of the kind that you have. And you could, I won't say easily, but you could conceivably create almost a venture studio in which, every year, every 2 years, something really amazing comes out.
I think that's absolutely, you and I are aligned in that thinking. Moreover, as a function of our business, 15 to 20% of our engineers are always on the bench because we're growing so fast that we have to have engineers ready. And so you start thinking about having 40, 50, 60 engineers on the bench. That's like 20 Y Combinator startups worth of engineers, right? And so absolutely, there's a great opportunity for us to spin off and create IP.
Okay, I'd love to have a separate conversation with you about that, but we do have to come to an end pretty soon. Let me end with a question that I really ask everybody, and it's an unfair question, but it's still a fun one. If you met your 25-year-old former self who was thinking of starting a company, what would you tell him?
Fall in love with a problem that you really, really authentically want to solve. In my case, the problem I wanted to solve was giving great opportunity to the most brilliant Latin Americans in the world. And that is the only thing that has kept me going through the mental health scares, the struggles, the difficulties financially, the sacrifices to my own opportunity costs, difficulties of my family. I think fall in love with a problem that you really, really care about. And don't wait till you think you're ready, because if you're smart and you're a perfectionist, you think the perfect time is always in the future. And the truth is, you're going to figure out, get started, right? Get started trying to solve that problem. And what happens is, yeah, you can strategize. Strategy is important, but execution informs the strategy. Execution gives you data points that then inform the strategy. And I think a lot of us in B school have been taught that, you first think about things and you think about them ad nauseum and then you execute. And I think actually, no, start executing first and then that informs your strategy. And so those are the two pieces of advice I would give. Get started early. Don't be afraid about what you don't know, because you can hire people to complement you in areas that you don't know about, and fall in love with a problem that you genuinely, authentically want to solve.
I'll break rule for a second because I wrote a paper 40 years ago in which, in the Harvard Business Review, in which I mentioned something called thinking acting cycles. And what I say is what you said, and that is that senior executives, that was my focus at the time, they don't solve problems by sitting and thinking about them. They solve problems by taking action, taking action, thinking, because the action informs thinking. You learn about something when you try to change it. And kids do that too. That's how kids learn about things. They learn about things by doing things with them. So I certainly resonate to that. Well, this is not about me, this is about you. And Israel, I want to thank you very much for joining us in Scale Up Podcast. This has been really wonderful. I just want to, you can say goodbye to our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, and thank you to your audience. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
You know, Scale Up Podcast is a hobby. I've told this to everyone before. It's a serious hobby that I have. I don't charge for it. I do it because I'm in love with the whole process of growing companies. I like learning from these experiences, and but if you like it, share the love, so to speak. And this is on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on YouTube, it's on Buzzsprout, it's probably on another platform or two. But thank you very much for joining myself and Israel for this 20th Scale App podcast episodes. I have the feeling that we are not going to run out of exciting people to talk to. So I look forward to hosting all of you in subsequent episodes.